Everybody wants to tell you who they think their league winners are for the 2025 fantasy football season, but maybe more importantly, you should know who has league losing downsides. So that's what we're going to do today. Talk about 6 different players who could potentially sink your hopes of winning a fantasy championship this year. Now, Ty, I think it's probably important to name at the top that we are not preying on these players' downfalls, nor are we necessarily outright predicting they're going to be absolute busts this year. But instead of talking about the range of upside with some of these players, the floor is just a lot deeper than people may realize. That's all we're trying to point out today. Landmines you should maybe potentially avoid drafting. And we're going to go in ADP order. We're going to start at the top. Tyreek Hill is the first player you want to bring up. And I think this is a very valid choice.
Yeah, like you said, like Tyreek Hill is kind of the epitome of this episode. Like he's my wide receiver 13 in my projections right now. But if I were to like go in and take all players and make a single big board that weighs in risk, reward, and positional value, all that stuff, like Tyreek Hill is still going to drop a bit in my rankings because of the risk and the downside that he possesses. And I feel like I've talked about Tyreek a lot recently, so I'll try to keep this one short and sweet. He's a 31-year-old who regressed in one of the most, if not the most important stat for receivers at his age in his separation rate in single coverage. That's not a good sign. He can still be productive in fantasy because it wasn't like it was a dramatic drop off a cliff, but it was noticeable enough to go, maybe the days of being a top 10 guy are just not there anymore. He can be a 13 to 18 type guy, and that's fine. But this is just where my worry lies, is that sure, he can finish there, but the floor is way lower than people probably want to admit here. There are too many potential negative outcomes than positive or even neutral outcomes that would make him a relative floor play. You get an injury here to Tua. You get an injury to Tyreek himself. You get an injury along the offensive line. This situation is so fragile, so volatile. I don't know if I want to sink early third round capital. And that's saying something for a guy like Tyreek Hill. So you can be in on him, but I hope people understand why they're going in on Tyreek Hill, and not just because of the name value here. You have to know and understand the days of a top 5, and I would go as far to say top 10, those days are likely over.
I can understand why people are targeting this Miami Dolphins offense, because upside does win fantasy football championships. I firmly believe that. But you have to know when to pick and choose your spots to target that upside and avoid the volatility in the process that comes at the cost, right? And I think that's exactly what you're looking at with the Miami Dolphins is you saw the floor last year. Does the upside for Tyreek Hill at this age, with all the concerns around this Miami Dolphins offense, you got Devon Achane dealing with a soft tissue injury. I don't like soft tissue injuries at this point in the offseason. They are scary. I want to really still like Devon Achane. I'm fighting my internal love of Devon Achane to not like knock him down a spot or two in my rankings, but Tua, can he stay healthy a full season? Like, this is not a spot where I want to be attacking volatility. I mean, really, after Josh Jacobs, I'm just kind of like, I almost don't want to make a third round pick. At least in underdog drafts, these third, fourth round range of wide receivers are just so scary. So I get why people want to target Tyreek Hill and say, well, yeah, but he probably has the most upside out of all these guys. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but boy, what if Father Time catches up here? What if we just get another terrible Miami Dolphins season? And like their preseason has, what would you make of the Dolphins preseason? I want to ask you that question, because the preseason for me, there's been moments where it's like, oh, we're back. But then there's also been moments where I'm like, oh dear God, we're in for another atrocious ride this season. And like, I'm really tempted to not choose the middle, because I don't think it could be the middle. It's, they're going to surprisingly smash or massively disappoint again. Early third round capital. I'm just not ready to, like you said, to sink your teeth into that.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just hit or miss. Everything feels like it's really, it's really working out, and then it's really not. and it's one step forward and maybe two steps backwards, or maybe just one step backward. And so you're just back at the spot that you originally started at. So like you said, like it doesn't feel like there's a middle ground for this Miami offense. Either they're going to kind of get back to the 2023 levels that we saw them at, or it's again going to be similar to what we saw last year. And I don't think we can necessarily sit here and say like, injuries are going to hit this team again and all that stuff. Like there's no way that we can predict that, but you can't sit where you are. You can't as a fantasy football player, can't sit here and go, the vibes feel great with Miami.
You're lying to yourself if that's what you're telling yourself. Sorry, exactly. I hate to break it to you, but you're lying to yourself if that's what you're trying to convince yourself of.
Right. So that just leads me to saying it's not going to surprise me if they do well, but there's too much negative, or there's too much downside here. And in some weird way, the Miami Dolphins are other people's Christian McCaffreys.
Sure. I don't want to touch them. I'm done. I saw the negativity of it. I don't need that plaguing my roster again this year. No, I wouldn't go as far as saying that, but you're right. Tyreek Hill feels like the epitome of this video, where if he finishes as a wide receiver 12 this year, we're not telling you that he's not going to finish as a wide receiver 12. All Ty and I are saying is like, hey, you have to look at this Miami Dolphins offense and at least acknowledge, boy, when the floor falls out from this team, it is just bad news bears, and you don't want any of these dudes on your roster. Before we get into the next player, Ty, I have to commend our audience, though, because they have been blowing away my expectations thus far. Earlier this week, I said I have a dream. I have a massive goal that I want to hit 5,000 subs by the start of the season. And we had a long ways to go, right? Like 480 at the start of the week, but they have been flooding in out of support of our content. So thank you all. If you want to help us reach that goal, our next goal is 5,000 subs. Hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is up. As much as we want to provide you fantasy football insights to help you beat your league mates, we want to remind you of the fun and camaraderie that comes with playing the game of fantasy football. It's how Ty and I became better friends. Our co-host Cameron as well. We want to remind you of the fun that fantasy football brings as well. So we do hope you join us for this journey. I'm going to pivot again, ADP order. We talked about these third, fourth round wide receivers. We're going on underdog ADP. So Marvin Harrison Jr. does come in next for me. I don't feel like I have to convey much, Ty. I just might have to tell people Marvin Harrison Jr. was the wide receiver 42 in fantasy points per game last year, averaging only 11.6 points per game. And now he's still going as a top 15 wide receiver this year. After you drafted him in the early second round last year, now you're like, but you know what? A round discount is all I need after the dud he put up in his rookie season. Could he break out and have a breakout 2 wide receiver? Absolutely. He could break out and be a top 15 wide receiver this year. I'm not telling you he can't, but boy, I don't like copying and pasting year over year, Ty, because I think it's the laziest form of fantasy football analysis that can be provided. But I'm going to have you answer this for me before I keep going. What has changed for the Arizona Cardinals offense this season?
0.
Give me that Johnny Manziel meme on the screen right now. 0. Nothing has changed for this offense. It's still Drew Petzing running the show. It's still Marv as the wide receiver 1. You really didn't get him any help. Trey McBride is still there. Kyler Murray is still like, I don't know, every third game you just get a duck out of him. And from what we've seen in golly, dude, I so badly just want easy crossing routes, easy button touches for Marv. And all I'm seeing is these dope contested catches on Twitter during preseason. They're cool. But oh man, if it's going to be that hard for Marv to get catches for the second straight year, like bulking up in muscle, becoming absolutely a gym warrior, a weightlifting warrior, and getting shredded over the offseason, I'm sorry. That's not enough for me to ignore the wide receiver 42 in fantasy points per game last year, the wide receiver 30 overall. This is one where, again, you sink your teeth. Early fourth round is maybe a little bit more digestible for me, but even at the wide receiver 16 in your home leagues, by golly, that's such an easy range for me to pass up on Marv and take a George Kittle, to take an Amari and Hampton. I won't go as far as saying Travion Henderson. But man, there's a lot of other players going in that range in your home league specifically that I'm just like, it's an easy pass on Marv for me because I know the downside that he provides. And it's like, he could be the wide receiver 35 in points per game this year and just tank whatever pick you spent on him.
Yeah, Marv is. It feels generic to say that he's fascinating, but the optimism, the hope that I had for Marv going into this year is that we were going to start hearing that Marvin Harrison is starting to get moved around the formation, like you were kind of mentioning, to just get him some easy looks. I haven't heard a peep about that. So that leads me to believe that we're going to have another season of just sticking Marvin Harrison Jr. outside on the X. Now, year 2, after just a year of experience under his belt, you would think should be better than last year. And the other part of this too is that, like, of his 116 targets last year, he only caught 62 of them. So
it can get better.
Right, it can get better. He had 8 touchdowns for 800 yards though on those 62 catches. So to in my mind justify the price tag that you're going to pay up for him right now as a top 15 wide receiver in the 3rd round, at least on Underdog, different story in your home leagues because he's more like a 4th round pick, and that's way easier for me to digest.
Yep.
But even then, it's not like the risk goes away here. The risk still is that Marv isn't really suited for the X role, but that's where he's going to be playing the majority of the time. So you can have the optimism, you can have the outlook that he has more targets than last year, that he has a better catch rate on those targets, and that he has more touchdowns. But at the same time, again, the downside is that it doesn't work out exactly like we're kind of hoping it does, and that maybe he's kind of a low-end wide receiver too. Still a little more digestible in the 4th round in your home leagues, but especially here on Underdog in the 3rd round, it's going to feel like a bust. So again, you and I both agree that Marvin Harrison Jr. is still a very talented receiver. We're not saying that the step forward isn't possible this year.
No,
we can definitely see it, but we can definitely see a repeat or a similar, type year as his rookie year.
Again, I hate copying and pasting. It's so lazy. I don't trust people who just copy and paste year over year, but tell me what I'm supposed to get new out of this offseason from the Arizona Cardinals. It was funny. I quote tweeted one of the contested catches Marv made in this offseason. I'm like, oh boy, this is cool and all, but like, can we please get Marv on a dig route, on an easy crosser route? Someone in my comment, oh yeah, well, there was like, I saw a clip earlier and whatever. And then of course you see that you remember that ugly pick Kyler threw in the first preseason game.
Oh man.
What you want to know what route Marv was running? Simple crossing route. And Kyler Murray could have given the football. So like sneakily, I think you're like, there's like a sneaky litmus test here of like your confidence in Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably actually your confidence in Kyler Murray.
True.
Where I think Kyler Murray is a fine NFL quarterback, but boy, I don't think he can string more than 2 games together. And when a number 1 wide receiver who already disappointed in his rookie season has that as his quarterback play, I'm just like, I'm not sold. Marv is this great investment at the wide receiver 16, early 4th round in your home leagues, just to name a few other players going around him, not on Underdog. We've referenced Underdog ADP, but I would take, again, George Kittle around him. I would take Amari Hampton around him. I would take Alvin Kamara. I would take Kenneth Walker, a handful of guys. I would just much rather click. Joe Burrow, another one. I would just much rather click straight up, regardless of my roster construction over Marvin Harrison Jr. Another player going in this range, though, Ty, I think I'm clicking him ahead of Marvin Harrison too, but day by day, I am OUT on the New York Jets. Originally in the offseason, I said I want more Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson because I like the rushing upside of Justin Fields, and there's nobody else in this offense to throw to outside of Garrett Wilson. But boy, there's only so many ways you can spin the negatives into a positive here for Garrett Wilson, Ty.
Yeah, a negative and a negative equals a positive, at least in multiplication. But
Totally.
like a negative on a negative on a negative on a negative on a negative is not a positive. Okay, and so that's a nice, easy way of just saying, like, Vibes are not great here as well for Garrett Wilson. I've had a lot of people tell me he's back with his college quarterback. He's the only guy in this offense. I know.
Both are true.
Both are true. But the touchdowns that he can get and the touchdowns that this whole offense scores cap his upside. Like, this Jets offense, for as much as we like the fantasy pieces here, they are a bottom 5 projected offense according to Vegas this year. So we are relying on volume, on pure volume here, if projections play out correctly. But again, pure volume to justify a top 15, a top 16 wide receiver here in Garrett Wilson. Through 3 seasons, Garrett Wilson averages 5 touchdowns and 150 targets a season. And you hear those numbers and you're like, well, the targets are nice. Touchdowns, not so much, but I'll take the targets. And believe it or not, I have a incredible find that may best explain the range of outcomes here for Garrett Wilson.
Give it to me.
There have been only 3 wide receivers since 2010 to have those numbers in a single season. 5 touchdowns and 150 targets. Golden Tate, blast from the past, in 2014. DeAndre Hopkins in 2016.
Good football
Michael
player.
Thomas. Yeah, good football player. Michael Thomas, Mr. Slant Boy, in 2017. Golden Tate was the wide receiver 11 in full PPR. Hopkins was the wide receiver 26, and Slant Boy was the wide receiver 6. Now you hear the Golden Tate finish and the Michael Thomas finish, and you go, oh, wow, look at that upside. Here's the catch. The Saints in 2017 were second in scoring. The Lions in 2014 were middle of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
And the Texans in 2016 were second to last. Okay? That is the range of outcomes that we're talking about here for Garrett Wilson. So with, again, this offense being bottom 5 projected scoring offense, I'll just say it like this. We have said, I should say specifically Cam has said, that guys like Tataroa and McMillan will only go as far as their quarterback will take them. For Garrett Wilson, that can also be true, but I'm also going to say he can only go as far as the offense as a whole will go. And I think you're paying a premium for, I don't want to say it's nothing, but it really isn't worth getting super excited for, in my opinion.
You just look at the preseason for the Jets. I'm not even going to add anything because I'm with you. I'm like, the Jets offense could stink. I could counter and tell you, oh yeah, it's literally the only dude, whatever, but you can only spin the positives so high when you consider all the negatives as well. Great stat that was pulled. I heard it over on Josh and Hayden's fantasy football show over at Underdog. Justin Fields only averaging 3.9 air yards per attempt this preseason. It's abysmal. And like what you hear out of camp, what you've seen in the preseason games, that's been 100% it. Justin Fields isn't he's not willing to be creative anymore. He's almost like I don't want to say trying to prove he can make the check down throw, but he's not willing to break outside the pocket, get creative, wait for things to develop. It's almost just like he's open,
playing in structure.
Right. But like he's playing confined and like in structure, but like you can play within structure. You can play Drew Brees. You can play within structure, throw it to Michael Thomas and have a phenomenal scoring offense. But what makes Justin Fields is his willingness to break outside the pocket, extend plays, get creative, wait for things to develop. And that's just not happening. So if you're like, could you get a dink and dunk Garrett Wilson with 160 targets this year that only goes for like 1,100 yards though on what we'll say 95 receptions? Sure, you could get that. But what's that going to equate to? The wide receiver 16 at best?
At best.
And the worst is Justin Fields can't hit the broadside of a barn? And Garrett Wilson gives you a finish closer to the wide receiver 30 than he does the wide receiver 15? That's what you got to bake in here. It's all just bad vibes from the Jets passing game. The backfield was a mess there too. It's honestly like the only player I'm willing to touch. shockingly enough, is Justin Fields, is because he has the rushing upside. Well, Braylon Allen is the other one.
Yes, let's go.
Braylon Allen's the other one I'm willing to invest in. But like Justin Fields at least has the rushing upside in your home leagues where he's going, hold on, let me check specifically where he's going. He is going at pick 101 on average in your home leagues. He's going 127 overall over on Sleeper. That's the easiest click in the 10th round for me. Make that the 11th round actually in your home leagues with the rushing upside he has. But for Garrett Wilson, it's just bad news bears.
Yeah, last thing here. People will forever and always say, well, what if he has the DJ 2023 year where he finishes the wide receiver 6? That came with 8 touchdowns and nearly 14 yards a catch. If Garrett Wilson's going to get those numbers, I will be glad. I will be glad to be proven wrong then, because again, like you said, everything about this Jets offense feels so, can I say basic? Like everything.
I mean, it's being treated as if Justin Fields needs to be absolutely coddled.
Right. It feels like everything is so rudimentary that we aren't going to try to go outside of the guardrails here. And because of that, that gives me some worry and some concern for then the overall upside of really all the Jets players here.
Yeah, and I know we've been talking a lot about your home league ADP, but really one of the best places instead of mock drafting against the automated bots over on like a Sleeper or on another draft wizard that you may use, you can draft against real people for real prizes who are just as invested as you are over on Underdog. So if you want to target these players because you think we're dumb, or if you're like, heck yeah, I can draft George Kittle after Garrett Wilson, I'm totally going to do that. We'll take a break here from our friends at over at Underdog, on how you can do so. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, home of Best Ball Mania 6. There are $15 million in prizes up for grabs, with $2 million going to first place and another $1 million going to second place. Entering is super easy. You join a draft with 11 other people, select your team, and Underdog will automatically generate your highest scoring lineup each week. Essentially, you get all the fun of drafting with zero stress of making the wrong decision on who to start. Underdog hosts a variety of other contests as well, ranging from $3 entries to $500 entries, so there's something for everybody's pocketbook. If you're not on Underdog yet, use the code FELLAS when you sign up, because they'll give you up to $1,000 in bonus credits to play with, and we'll give you our 2025 draft guide for free. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. Alrighty, Ty, 3 more players with league losing downside here. I'm going to pivot us to another wide receiver.
Wow.
Fantasy football drafts. I mean, this range of wide receivers this year is just atrocious. I mean, it was like the second round last year in fantasy football drafts, right? Where it's like the second to third round is just super flat. And now you get to the third, fourth one, you're like, oh, do I have to make a pick here? Terry McLaurin, the Washington Commanders, league losing downside here, 100%. So I was already out on Terry for the fact that there would likely be touchdown regression coming his way this year. I mean, to hit 13 of them in a season after averaging only 5 per season through the first 5 years of your career, just literally screams outlier to me. So there was certainly regression coming closer to the 7 to 8 range this year, but he is still holding in while bartering for a new contract, which reportedly he wants top 4 average annual value at the position. He wants more money than the $33 million per year DK Metcalf just got from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And like, frankly, like to just be honest for a moment, I can't blame both sides on this one. If you're Terry McLaurin, you are coming off of a career year with a brand new franchise quarterback, and you're saying, pay me, big dog. If you want to get back to the NFC Championship, pay me that money. And it's kind of his last chance where he's at in his career. It's kind of his last chance to earn himself a bag. But hey, if I'm the Washington Commanders, I'm looking at the first 5 years of Terry's career and I'm saying $33 million per year. Cool. Like, 1 year doesn't just automatically get you this kind of money. If you were talking closer to $28 million a year, even I bet if they even got him down to like 30 mil, like maybe they can come to an agreement there. But you mentioned it in your video on our shorts page earlier this week, Taya, of a potential landmines to avoid in your fantasy drafts. Like, this Terry McLaurin contract dispute it's getting to the point of like scary Brandon Ayuk vibes from last offseason. And Brandon Ayuk started last year as the wide receiver 55 in points per game, even after he got his nice new flashy, shiny contract. those were in the games he was actually active for, not for the entire season after he missed with an ACL, obviously. So just all those things considered, like the perfect storm of Terry McLaurin being a league loser here is he just simply holds out the entire season and gives you 0 fantasy points per game this year. I mean, that's literally all I have to say in terms of Terry McLaurin being a league loser. I'm not going to try and make it this analytical thing, even though I do think Terry McLaurin regresses this year. I'm not going to tell you he's a Marvin Harrison of last year and only finishes as the wide receiver 42 in fantasy points per game. It's just that the scenario here is that Terry doesn't get his contract and he just ends up not playing. Like that is literally worst case scenario that I'm trying to paint.
Yep. There's then the optimism or the hope then that maybe like second half of the year bounce back, right, when he's kind of fully caught up to game action and caught up with everything that's been put in place here
Game
during
shape.
the offseason.
He's not practicing right now. I mean, that's the other thing you have to consider here. He's not practicing. Like he's not in sync with this offense right now. Like Brandon Ayuk misses all this time. Doesn't look that great to start the season. That's the other thing you have to name here too. So keep going. Sorry. I think that's just so important that I missed out on.
If people will look at the Brandon Ayuk situation and go, well, they're actually two very different receivers. One had Kyle Shanahan, the other has Cliff Kingsbury and all that stuff. I don't care. I really don't care. This is a starting wide receiver. Brandon Ayuk last year, if you want a refresher of where he was going in drafts, he was going anywhere in the third round. Terry is somehow, or I shouldn't say somehow, he's justifiably fell into like the fourth round of your drafts. But even then, again, Brandon Ayuk was outside the top 15 points per game before he got hurt. Like that is the downside that you kind of face when you draft Terry McLaurin this year. And the closer and closer that we get to September, which, hey, just news flash, that's 10 days away, 9 days when you're hearing this. Like, we are getting dangerously close to what I will just say the dreaded September 1st deadline, where if he's not on an extension by that point, I've got zero faith. I'm almost then going to we do a lot of dynasty leagues.
Yep.
And for those of us, or for those of you that are in our dynasty leagues and are listening to this, don't hear what I'm about to say. Okay. I'm going to try to go like sell Terry then, because I at least want something.
Sorry.
Dude, honestly, who knows? Who knows? Like, I hope that you can hear the concern that you and I are like in the voices of ours.
Yep.
That if Terry doesn't have a contract come September 1st, it is scary hours for scary Terry. And he is then someone that you're completely avoiding. I'm just going to hold my hands up on this one and just say, we did an episode about a month and a half ago about guys that we have not taken a single time in drafts.
Yeah. You brought up Terry.
Terry was one of my guys, and I'm feeling way, way justified with how the rest of this contract dispute is played out.
Yeah. People are not happy about that because they said there was still time. And you're like, yeah, but what? But this could happen. This could last all off season. I'm going to wait till the value dips far enough before I want to invest again. And admittedly, Terry has only dropped 5 wide receiver spots this offseason?
Yeah.
Opened up as the wide receiver 15, 16, and he's down to the wide receiver 21 now.
Yeah. Like underdog, he's still a wide receiver too. That makes no sense in my mind.
In your home leagues, Terry is going as the wide receiver 19. The dumbest thing I've seen on the internet today, Terry McLaurin has an average draft position of 45th overall across consensus home league platforms. George Pickens, 66th overall on your home league platforms.
Make that make sense.
It's the biggest mistake you can make. To me at this point, it's George Pickens over Terry McLaurin straight up. They're going back to back over on underdog right now. They're picking a half apart. George Pickens, I'm taking over him. Jameson Williams, I'm clicking over Terry McLaurin at this point. Tedero McMillan, I'm clicking over Terry McLaurin at this point. Xavier Worthy is going ahead of him on underdog. I think I'm starting to lean towards a Terry McLaurin based on how this Rashee Rice stuff is starting to play out.
Oh, lean towards Xavier Worthy.
Yes. Sorry. Did I say leaning towards Terry?
You said Terry.
I meant Xavier Worthy. Right. I meant Xavier Worthy. Right. All these guys are going after Terry McLaurin in your home. DK Metcalf is going 2 picks after Terry McLaurin in your home leagues. A guy who's making actually, $33 million. I'll just take the guy who's making his money and is actually taking the reps with Aaron Rodgers right now. I don't know if I would take DJ Moore over Terry McLaurin. That one's that
Ooh,
you're testing two different sides of me on that one. But all that to say is, I'm not investing fourth round capital in Terry McLaurin when I can get George Pickens 21 picks later in my home league. There's no questions asked. Almost 2 4 rounds later, I would much rather invest in a George Pickens. We'll keep it moving though, Ty. We'll talk about a not wide receiver going in the first 3 to 4 rounds of your home leagues. This is a fascinating one. I think we can have a little bit of discussion on this because you brought up DeAndre Swift as a player with league losing downside this year, and maybe I'll open by like giving my over like my 30-second elevator pitch as to why I don't necessarily see DeAndre Swift as a league loser per se. And maybe it's because I just don't see the floor as being low enough for where he's being drafted to potentially be a league loser. I just think there's a wider chance of him just like having a very average wide receiver 20 to 25 season. And I don't see a ton of upside, but like I don't see a ton of downside because I'm just not as scared of whatever battle is happening between Kyle Monangai and Roshan Johnson right now.
is there a battle?
Well, no, Roshan. I think Kyle Monangai has already beat down Roshan Johnson pretty bad, but like I think it's been more about Kyle Monangai versus Roshan Johnson than DeAndre Swift necessarily getting beat out by, not beat out, but like being majorly impacted by a Kyle Monangai. But what say you?
It feels like DeAndre Swift. I'm trying to remember who the running back was last year. Actually, you know what? It was the preseason kind of outlook for Chuba Hubbard in the sense that Chuba Hubbard was going to be the guy at the beginning of the season, and then we fully expected Jonathan Brooks to be the guy in the second half of the year. I see DeAndre Swift in a very similar way, except I'm just not sure that it's going to play out the same way like Chuba Hubbard, in that it's actually going to be kind of a season of two halves. Yeah, it's going to get ugly, where the first half, it is going to be DeAndre Swift, or the majority of work in the backfield is going to go to DeAndre Swift. But then as the season goes on, it's going to become whoever, honestly, whoever. Could be a trade. It could be Monangai. It could be Roshan. It could be DJ Moore. It could be DJ Moore here,
Yeah.
okay? So I understand that like he could have just a very average season. Completely understand that, because again, you may look at the talent behind DeAndre Swift and go like, is somebody really going to overtake this? Sure, I would understand that argument, but if you think that there's upside, because I've seen plenty of people say that DeAndre Swift is a smash pick in the 5th round or in the 6th round of your drafts because look at the upside that he has. Can you quantify or like tangibly explain what that upside is? Because I can't. I cannot do that myself, but I can point out the downside where the floor does fall out here for DeAndre Swift, where he's lower in the pecking order when they get into the red zone. He's behind in both the pass and in the run game. He's not the thumper. If you want to get him involved in the pass game, well, that sucks because DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Colson Loveland, Luther Burden, even you can make an exception for him. That's 4 guys.
3 guys with high draft capital invested in him too.
Right. The early down work starts slipping away at some point during the season. It gets to Kyle Monangai. It gets to Roshan Johnson. The caveat with that is that again there is a back there that emerges with that. But when Ben Johnson was DeAndre Swift's offensive coordinator in 2022, DeAndre Swift played 38.2% of early down snaps and 52% of third downs, or of third down snaps, I should say. Excuse me. So, does Ben Johnson have the confidence in DeAndre Swift? He may not have the confidence, but he may just be like, you know what? At least for the beginning of the year, it's got to be him because it's not going to be anyone else. And I talked about the receiving work in the red zone, but maybe the receiving work comes back down because there are so many mouths to feed here. Like in 2020 or in 2022, again in Detroit, besides Amon-Ra St. Brown, there was no one else. It was Josh Reynolds. DeAndre Swift was second in targets on that team. So again, if all those things go wrong, 2 of 3 of those things go wrong, DeAndre Swift is probably closer to the running back 30 than he is to the running back 20. And again, I just ask, what is the upside? Can you quantify that? Can you tangibly explain it to me? Because the the downside here outweighs all of whatever kind of upside case you may paint.
I just don't entirely know if this Bears offense is going to be bad enough this year where DeAndre Swift just has the floor entirely fall out from underneath him. I'm just not convinced that totally happens, because even when you do look back at his 2022 season, I mean, he was over the back half of the season. He only had 2 games with more than 8 carries. So I don't know if it's necessarily fair to look back on 2022 and be like, hey, but this is what happened with Ben Johnson. I just like I don't like applying that season in that perspective. I think it's valid to say, yes, in the goal line, it's going to be Kyle Monungai, who's apparently a hammer. Like, preseason action has shown Kyle Monungai is an absolute hammer, I guess. And you can dock him in the receiving game. You can dock him for all the weapons going ahead of him. I'm just not convinced he's like a league loser, because I think the Chicago Bears offense has to absolutely stink. And I'm just not convinced with the shift to Ben Johnson, with all the tough love he's been giving this offense, that the run game is going to fall out from underneath this offense, because this team does need to run the ball. And when you look at the backfield, it's DeAndre Swift or Kyle Monungai. And I think you and I both agree, like, as much as a fun little player Kyle Monungai is, I think we're both going to take DeAndre Swift as the primary back for this offense.
I think with this, what we're through many words, if I could sum it up, our positions on DeAndre Swift, I see a world where this Bears offense can be efficient, can be productive, but DeAndre Swift may not be in the picture for that. You see a world where if DeAndre Swift falls out of the picture, it's because the Bears offense isn't succeeding and is more failing than not.
I just don't see how you can have a run game with the Chicago Bears offense and DeAndre Swift not be a part of it. And like, I know you're not saying DeAndre Swift is eliminated entirely. I'm just, I don't think Ben Johnson will allow this run game to not succeed. And I think I think the floor is higher than maybe you were giving it credit for. And maybe that's where I'll put a pin on it, is I think you think the floor for this run game is probably lower than I actually think it is, with Ben Johnson in town now and the running mates DeAndre Swift has, which, yeah, Kyle Monungai, nice little player, but yeah, I see him as much more of a third and short rather than a third and short kind of a guy, and like a guy within the 5-yard line, than I do like a guy who can actually threaten DeAndre Swift's in between the tens, I'll say, workload. That's just kind of where I'm at. And you and I just see that a little bit differently. So one running back I think we maybe can agree on. I think maybe it depends on like your draft philosophy on how you want to draft this next player. Joe Mixon is he's becoming, I'm just not going to touch him with a 10-foot pole. There's a simple saying out there that goes, don't chase injuries in fantasy football because they are certain to find you during the regular season. So why would you draft a guy who's basically dealing with an injury in the preseason that you is probably likely to carry it into the regular season, when there's going to be other injuries that find your roster already? So you're just basically shooting yourself in the foot twice, right? And I don't want to say this is Christian McCaffrey bad from last off season of like the Christian McCaffrey levels of sketchy from last off season, but I don't know, Ty, it's August 20th as we're recording this, and we still don't have a timeline for Joe Mixon on when he's returning to action, unless if something comes out in the next like 24 hours after we record this. They finally labeled his injury as a foot sprain back on August 8th. But the other thing that I think is significant about this is that he's not on the PUP list, Ty. He's on the NFI list. Two very different things. If he's not activated off of the NFI list in the next 2.5 weeks before the Texan season opener, he's missing at least 4 games to start the season. He can't be activated off the list until 4 games have been played by the Houston Texans this year. Admittedly, I was all over drafting Joe Mixon earlier this offseason as the running back 19, with Nick Caley coming in to run this offense, adapting the run game to Joe Mixon's strengths. But considering we've been waiting all summer, I have the majority of the summer in my notes, but really it's been all summer for any sort of good news on Joe Mixon, and we're still being left in the dark on this. I mean, this just screams potential dead weight and complete waste of a draft pick. where Joe Mixon could be out longer than 4 weeks. And even if he does come back, he has no preseason reps. He's going to have to ramp back up. And by the time you're looking at a potentially fully healthy Joe Mixon, like at worst case scenario, if he does play this season, it might not be until like week 10. And at that point, you're 9 games into the fantasy football season with only four to five to go until the playoffs. Not great, Bob. Not great.
No, I think this can be a very simple question. When has a player ever succeeded when they've been dealing with an injury throughout an entire offseason? The team doesn't give us any kind of timeline, any kind of update where you can sit there and go, the silence is speaking louder than anything that they're going to be, that they would say.
It's deafening.
It sounds kind of similar to somebody from last year, does it not?
I mean,
does this not have like Christian McCaffrey vibes to it?
Hey, the only difference is we actually got positive news on McCaffrey. We got gaslit all offseason saying Christian McCaffrey will be ready. He'll be ready. He'll be ready. And I know originally there was there's a little concern that he'll miss week 1, and now it's just like no timeline. No, you can only say no timeline for so long until you're out of time to give Joe Mixon a timeline. Like, what are we going to get a timeline in the next week? And it's like, oh, the timeline for Joe Mixon is 7 days. Boy, that would have been nice to know 2 months ago. Couldn't you have said in 3 months Joe Mixon will be ready, and said he's ahead of schedule? Like,
right. Yeah.
No news is not good news here.
Correct. So ultimately, I think the position that I have is, again, there's so much downside here, and however, in so many different ways and shapes and forms, that even if he does play, like if we get the report that, yeah, he's going to be healthy for week 1, what's to say that he's not going to he's going to re-injure, the ankle again? Like what's to say that like that injury risk instantly goes away? He carries it throughout the rest of the year. So I don't want to call it like a ticking time bomb, but like the risk won't go away whenever Joe Mixon plays. It won't go away unless we hear we are putting him on, on the IR for at least 4 games. We're moving into the NFI list. He's on the PUP list, whatever. As soon as we get a timeline, at least then we can reassess. But the longer that we go in this kind of purgatory of like, what's going to happen? What are they going to do with Joe Mixon?
Just
the worse it's going to end up being. Right.
Purely undraftable. I mean, that's what it is. When you don't have any clarity, you can at least gauge with it, like a Jordan Addison suspension. You can at least gauge what Jordan Addison can still provide you in 14 games this year once his suspension is up. You can't gauge a timeline that you don't have, which is even more risky than investing in a guy like a Jordan Addison. Joe Mixon still going a very nice 69th overall, the running back 27 in your home leagues. Look, where people are competing for real money right now over on Underdog, try 95th overall, okay? Like, that market to me screams where Joe Mixon's value is probably more appropriate. Grant, albeit 3 wide receiver builds over on Underdog drafts, but boy, just don't be fooled into looking at the names around Joe Mixon in your home drafts and think it's still a good pick. Going ahead of Caleb John, going ahead of Travis Hunter, still going ahead of Mark Andrews, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Roma Dunze, Deebo Samuel, Jacoby Myers. Like, change this up. Joe Mixon has got to start crashing your home leagues. Like, it's not worth what would the 69th overall pick be? That'd be a 7th round pick. It's just not 7th round pick. Not worth investing there at all.
Math is hard. 12 times 7 is 84. 12 times 6 is 72.
6th round pick. Sorry, 6th round pick.
Yeah.
In my head, I went to 60, and I'm like, no, that's not right. That's 10 teams. That's 10 teams, not 12. We'll put a pin in it there, Ty. 6 players, league losing potential. Not saying that they are 100% going to be bust this year, but if you want to see where they actually end up in our final copies of our 2025 draft guide, which will be coming out this Friday and the Friday of Labor Day weekend. Fellasdraftguide.com. You probably saw our projections on the screen here. I got to make some tweaks to mine. I already know these guys are coming way down in these projections. This is kind of the final week where it's like, I got to put the hammer down on where I actually lie on players like a Joe Mixon, on Terry McLaurin, on a Marvin Harrison Jr. I already wasn't optimistically high on Marv, but like I got to bring Terry down a little bit lower. Joe Mixon is way too high at running back 23 right now. I totally got to bring him down. But we are making live updates to this. So each of the last 2 weeks leading up to your drafts, we will make sure you have a live updated copy in your hands. Again, we're on the road to 5K. Appreciate if you join us on that journey. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is up. Really, really appreciate the support that's been pouring in over that. It means a lot to us as three dudes who just love talking fantasy football, reminding you all of the love and camaraderie that comes with the game of fake football. If you want to follow our other socials as well for more exclusive content, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok, FFLas over on Twitter, DFFLs over on Instagram. And if you're just a loyal YouTuber, true, Fantasy Football Fellas shorts over there. Like the lower attire I am currently wearing is a nice pair of khaki shorts. You can follow us on our personal socials as well if you want more dumb content. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on X, Tyler_Plath for Ty. Maybe that, you know how Nick over at BDG, Nick Ericolano, every 2 days you just get a random tweet to start the day. Big day. You're like, yeah, big day. I just gotta start tweeting out shorts like the palm tree shorts I'm wearing today.
Well, you just need to like tweet
Different
out
vibes,
a different pair, like tweet
that's
out.
what is it? Just photos of whatever
of
shorts I'm wearing on a given day.
So it's khakis one day, it's like Nike Elites the next day, and then
Going to
it's
the
a pair
gym
of
this morning.
jorts.
Got my Fabletics on today. Not a sponsor.
Rise and grind. Hashtag rise and grind.
Right. Rise and grind. Today's hashtag shorts. Or a nice pair of gray Fabletics with an inner liner. V comfy for the gym. 8 out of 10.
5-inch inseam for maximum leg flexibility.
Great for single leg squats. Range of motion. 4 stars.
Highly would recommend.
Fully endorsed by Lucas of the Fantasy Football Fellas. All right, let's get out of here, Ty. Thanks to the people for listening to us through. We'll be back next week. Oh, we got it, Ty. Next week is it's a serious week next week. Because you want to know what next week is? It's final rankings week. Quarterback rankings, running back rankings, wide receiver rankings, tight end rankings to get you ready for your fantasy football. It's a big week. Sorry, I made the subscribe plug already, but it's big week next week at the Fellas to get you ready for your drafts. Make sure you're tuned in. We'll see you all then. Deuces.